Welcome to the show, sports fans. This is the Treasure Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in another edition of the Treasure Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, breaking down District 3 activities week in, week out. Brandon Baney is always joined by Logan Green. Logan, what's up?
Hey, Brandon, you know what? Today I had to go to the doctor, and I had to get a shot. And, well, they took my blood, and that is – I have to look away. I feel like such a pansy because I have to turn, and I'm like, I can't see it. I can't see it. I'm not going to pass out, but so I'm over here like acting like a baby. Like my wife's been teasing me today because I feel like I can't use my left arm, and she's like, "Oh, you poor thing." So I'm a little limited over here with the left arm.
Okay, we're both
real problems.
We were both listed as questionable for today's podcast, but we were able
according to Adam Schaefer, right? Is that
yeah, so sources have told me that Logan Green he's going to try and give it a go in pre-podcast warm-ups, but
he had to get a shot today, so I don't know if he's out for the week or not, but he might be.
Right. So yeah, I've been feeling a little under the weather. And so I'm a little more casually dressed today. I've got my Lapway hoodie on, but anyways, if you're watching the video on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, you can see all that. If you are listening audio only, that's awesome as well. IdahoSports.com YouTube channel and Facebook page. All right, let's get right into it. It was rivalry week. It's like rivalry week in the Treasure Valley, Logan. We had all these great matchups. The stinky sneaker. It's always hard for me to say that.
Yeah.
The stinky sneaker. We had a new rivalry as well. Let's start with the battle between Mountain View and Meridian, though. The stinky sneaker.
Yeah, I mean, if you saw pictures of it, Brandon, but it was completely full on both sides, as it always is. It always is full. You know what? You look at Mountain View; they've just come in on a roll. And I think the game was close throughout, but ultimately Mountain View comes away with a win in that this season. And they look really good right now. Mountain View does.
Yeah. And that coupled with their big win over Hawaii, recently as well, like you said. And so, boy, John Nettleton, man, he's been doing this a long time at Mountain View.
Right.
He's always got them right there in the mix. They play such great team ball. So yeah, Mountain View, a good performance and a good showing there. And then we had this new rivalry that took place, the battle for the Bolt between Eagle and Hawaii, and the Storm end up taking that in boys basketball 71-38. So pretty one-sided. Let's talk about, in the preseason, what we heard was, Hawaii is the team to beat in this league. Eagle is number 2. And then from there, there's a drop off in terms of like tiering the teams. But I think it's been proven now that, I don't think there is the top 4, Mountain View is 5-0 in league. Hawaii is 4-1. Timberline, Eagle, and Meridian are all 4-2. To me, it is very balanced this year in the 5A SIC.
Yeah. And I do think that there is, a bit of a drop because I'm just looking at Eagle, right? Because they played in this new, I texted Coach Harrington to ask him, why do they call it the Bolt? But, the new rivalry between Eagle and Hawaii is the battle for the Bolt. And Hawaii really dominated that game. I mean, huge win by the Storm. And that's an Eagle team that, that's lurking in that top 5. And so I'm wondering if there is a little separation, at least from some of those teams. But like you said, Meridian played Mountain View pretty close in that game, and hasn't, has been right around in the mix. And so it's going to be a really tough conference the rest of the way as districts come up between everybody that's left in the conference. Like you said, kind of in that top half, there's a log jam of teams towards the bottom with 3, 2, and 1 wins. But, those top 5, I think probably are rightfully so sitting in the top 5.
Yeah, Mountain View this year started 2-3 overall with losses to Meridian by 9, Centennial by 4. Those were non-conference games, though. They didn't count towards the league ledger, and they've since defeated Meridian, which they did Tuesday night, and then they have the matchup with Centennial still coming on February 3rd. So I would even throw Centennial in there. This top 6 is pretty balanced. And even, like CUNA at times has shown flashes of potential this year. But the reason why we're breaking the league down this way is because the top 4 becomes increasingly important this year, Logan, with a 13-team SIC. Basically, when we get to the postseason for both boys and girls basketball, and we saw this in soccer and in volleyball earlier this fall, but it's a 13-team bracket. Well, boy, that's kind of messy. How do you figure that out? Well, you give your top 4 teams automatic buys, and then you have a series of play-in games. 5 plays 13, 6 plays 12, 7 plays 11, or I think it's actually the top 5 teams get buys, and then it's 6 and 13, 7 and 12, 8 and 9. Maybe it's the top 3. I can't remember what it is.
I talked to Coach Hartman, and at least from what he had told me from Middleton, he said there was 4 that the top 4 got in. But you're right. I don't know how that line. I'd have to sketch it out.
I think it's 3. I think
top 3.
if I'm thinking back to volleyball, the top 3 teams got buys, and then 4 played 13, 5 played 12, 6 played 11, 7 played 10, 8 played 9, and that's a one shot deal. You lose that game if you're the 4th place finisher and you have a historically bad night and you lose to the 13th place team. That's it. You're done. Yeah. You don't get to go to the double elimination bracket. So finishing in the top 3 in both boys and girls basketball, crucially important this year in the SIC.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you need to be in those top 3, right? And I think the top 2 are the top 2, right? I think that's Mountain View and Hawaii, and it's a battle, right? For those, Meridian, Eagle, Rocky Mountain, even throwing them in there into that mix. With 2 wins, but Bora has 3, CUNA has 3, Centennial has 3. Those teams are right on the heels of Meridian, Eagle, and Timberline with those 4 wins. So the separation is not huge yet, right? There's not a huge gap between. It's right there. It still is anybody's opportunity, I think, for that third, those last opportunities for a bye. So we'll see how it shakes out. I think that you could see a team maybe get hot and get on a run. I tell you what, this is not a team that I think many people would expect to see in that. And I'm not saying that they are going to be, but I saw Boise play on Saturday night against Middleton, and they're good. I know that their record might not indicate that, but if that team can get hot and play like they did against Middleton, I think they're dangerous. I think that I'll say this: they're a team that can win in that first round, right? That play-in round. And I would not want to line up across from them. They've kind of been close in a lot of their games so far. Coach Varela told me on Saturday that they kind of had started off slow and in these games got down by so much that they were trying to fight their way back and they couldn't do so. Against Middleton, they led that game at one point by something like 30 points, 28 points. Nobody has beaten Middleton that bad this year, and Boise just crushed them. And so they're a team that, like you said, hey, you can do as well as you want all season long, but if you have one hiccup in that first round, and I think it's February 11th is, I think, the date for all of those games, that Saturday before the girls tournament, that's all going down. So, beware. Better show up on that day. If you're not ready to go, you're going home.
Yeah, and kind of, forecasting how this race might go. Timberline already has a win over Eagle, but a loss to Meridian. So Meridian and Eagle still need to play. So, I mean, there's a lot to be sorted out. It could come down to tiebreakers. That's what happened in a lot of the other sports in the fall in this gigantic conference. And I will tell you, Logan, that it's also crucially important to finish when you get to districts, to finish in the top 4 at districts, because the top 4 automatically get to go to state. 5th place and 6th place have to play the 2nd place team from the East and the North, respectively. That right now in the East is probably, Madison and or Rigby, which would be tough. And then to me, the infinitely more difficult matchup would be the number 2 team from the North. That's Coeur d'Alene. We saw Eagle and Meridian both go up to Coeur d'Alene earlier this year, and it didn't go well. So you want to stay away from that if you can.
Yeah, I don't think the District 3 is getting those extra bids, to just be on. Like, I mean, it's going to be a dog. Nobody's going to walk in and expect to win. I'll say that Coeur d'Alene is really good. And Rigby / Madison, I don't know who's going to win it. I feel like they go back and forth. But those two kind of look to be in control over there. I don't know. You probably have a better grasp on that, being over there in that part of the state. But I believe that those two are going to be the ones that come out of it. But I mean, even so, if we go back right to the Stinky Sneaker game, right, earlier this week, it was 8-point win, right? But that game was tied with about 2 minutes to go at 55. So it's not like Meridian wasn't in that game. Meridian led that game. They led for a good chunk of the game, right? I mean, they were doing well throughout, and there's no reason they could have just as easily had those last 2 minutes gone the other direction, come away with a win there. And this conversation is a totally different conversation today. So,
right.
It'll be, not only is it pertinent to win on the 11th, or to win the rest of the regular season, so you don't have to play on the 11th, and pertinent to win on the 11th, but definitely you don't want to play in a play-in game. You do not, because I don't know if it's going to happen. It's going to be tough games.
And I should mention that Eagle did beat Coeur d'Alene, but it was only by 3, and it was a game where they were on the ropes for a while. They almost lost to Post Falls, which Post Falls is not very good.
Not good.
and Post Falls was close. Meridian lost. Coeur d'Alene hung 100 on Meridian and won by 40+ points. So
yeah.
If you're in a play-in game, the East is better, definitely, because Madison and Rigby at times have shown weaknesses this year. Rigby lost to Madison by 9 the first time they played. That's been Rigby's only league game so far. But you definitely want to stay away from Coeur d'Alene in the north if you can. So,
okay, all right, transitive property then. So Lapwai beats Post Falls by a lot earlier this season. So you're telling me that Lapwai could compete in the 5A SIC? Is that what we're talking? Is if they could give Eagle a good game, let's throw them in. Let's see how it goes.
I do think Lapwai would be one of these teams that's sitting like 3-2 in league, 3-3, something like that in the SIC. I mean, the depth isn't there, so like night in, night out, they're going to wear down. But
give the people what they want. Give them that's all I'm asking.
This is like
yeah.
It's like the Big Ten. We'll just scoop up teams from wherever.
Just scoop them up. Well, this is a little sidebar, but Lapwai earlier this year, right, beat Lakeside, who's a good team from Plummer. And I saw that Lakeside dropped 120 points. Did you see this?
Yes.
On Clark Fork? And that was with a running clock, right?
Yes.
Because they won by like 60. How do you do that? That's a lot of points.
A lot of steals, a lot of quick layups. That's how that goes.
Like you see teams that are on offensively only put up 80 or 90 points only. But anyways, that was probably the most impressive offensive output of the season for any team. But
yes.
Anyway, you're right. I guess what that boils down to is you don't want to play in the play-in game. Maybe in past years it's been something that I'll take my chances in the play-in game, but not anymore.
No. And this conversation applies to the girls' side as well. If we shift over down to the 5A SIC girls, where again, you're looking at the same scenario. Top 4 from districts get to go to state. 5th and 6th have to do play-in games. It's even more magnified on the girls' side, right? You've got Thunder Ridge, which is undefeated. You've got Rigby, which is 15-3. Those are both from the East. They played for the first time last night, and Thunder Ridge won by 12-ish.
Mm-hmm.
But they're both really good. Rigby came over for the Timberline tournament, or Thunder Ridge came over for the Timberline tournament and went 3-0 earlier this year. And then up north, right? You've got Lake City, Coeur d'Alene, and Post Falls, who are all, they've combined to lose 6 times this year amongst all of the teams. So this happened last year. Why he had to play Post Falls in a play-in game and lost. So this is where it's even more important on the girls' side, because whereas on the boys' side, I give you a good chance to win against the team from the East. It's going to be infinitely more difficult on the girls' side. So right now the top 4 is Boise at 9-0 in league. Owyhee and Rocky Mountain are both 7-1, and Timberline is 7-2. Timberline lost to Owyhee last week in a pretty close game, but the Storm continue to play well under Coach Jordan Axe, and they're a young team. They're relying on a lot of sophomores. But here's how this stands: is Owyhee beat Timberline 47-43, but then they lost to Rocky Mountain as well, 50-43. So there's some tiebreaker stuff that could happen in amongst that tonight. As we're recording this on Thursday the 19th, you have Rocky playing Timberline tonight and Owyhee playing Boise. We will have a lot to talk about from those games on next week's show, Logan.
Yeah, and that's going to tell us a lot, right? I think you're going to get now all of a sudden the dust maybe starts to settle a little bit, but I don't know if that's going to happen with those at least the 3 of the top 4. Right now, nobody's shown that they can beat Boise, and will somebody do it? Maybe. We'll see. But right now it's Boise and then those 3. And like you said, if it is 3 that get that automatic bid, that's a battle, right? To not have to play. Not that I think that there would be any concern with the teams at the bottom half of the league with an upset there in the first round, to be honest. From what I've seen, nothing against Nampa and Bora, but those teams are young and they're going to struggle. Just from going to some of their games, just to be honest. So, but it's nice to have the weekend off and not have to play.
So Boise has lost once this year. It was way back in the season opener to Lake City, 73-62. They have won 16 in a row since then, Logan. But look at this schedule. Here are the final 3 games of the year for Boise. Tonight at Owyhee, Saturday at home versus Rocky Mountain, and then Tuesday at Timberline. That is the top. Those are the 3 teams that are right behind them.
They saved the best for last.
Man.
And it's crazy because next week is it, right? Teams are having their I saw a post that people are having senior night this week. Like there are senior nights today.
Some have already happened. Yeah.
Isn't that crazy that we're already there? But next week for most teams is it, right? Is the end of the regular season. So now is the time to play well, to get it in order, because you could be done playing basketball in 10 days, which is, kind of crazy to think about at this point, but we're almost there. So now's the time. And Boise is going to almost essentially start, right, a tournament lifestyle for the rest of the season, right?
Yeah.
They're going to be playing teams that are more than likely going to state for the rest of the way on out, except for maybe, those first 2 games at districts, but you've got 3 games to finish up your regular season against probable good chance to be in state teams. And then you're going to if you go to state, obviously that's a state team. So, a heck of an end of the way but maybe that's what you want, right? Maybe you want to be going up against those really good teams late in the year so that you roll in with a head full of steam. So,
yeah, it's really interesting to see how that's going to shake out.
We can't all be Alabama and play the Citadel the week before the season ends. So,
yes,
spoken like
a true ACC fan over
there. There is no hey NC State. Here we go. They're number 25 in the net right now, so we should be in to the tournament.
Oh yeah, no, I think they're a tournament team if the NCAA tournament started today for sure. Okay, let's move to the 4A SIC on the boys' side, where Bishop Kelly had been the team everyone had kind of, and it was an uneasy, in the preseason coaches poll, everyone kind of reluctantly said Bishop Kelly, not because they didn't think BK was good, but because they thought, boy, this league, anybody really could take this thing by the horns. And I think we've seen that where overall against other leagues, the league has struggled. Only 2 teams have winning records when you look at overall marks. And in the middle of the league standings, it's kind of this jumbled mess. But really, Bishop Kelly, their last 2 times out have taken it on the chin a couple of times. They lost to Skyview by 5, 46-41 last Friday. And then Tuesday night in double overtime, they fall to Columbia 58-56. So that sets up now Skyview alone in first place at 5-0, and this is boys basketball. Columbia is second at 4-1. Columbia and Skyview already played. Or no, they haven't played. Columbia's. Oh, yes, they have. Okay, so Columbia lost to Skyview at the Parma Holiday Tournament. How about this, Logan? Columbia and Skyview are big rivals. They're playing each other twice starting tonight. So the winner of this game is in first place in the standings. But they also played for an unscheduled third time at the Parma Holiday Tournament. It was a close game. Columbia won 69-66. What do you think we're in store for in the rematch tonight?
I'm just sorry. I'm looking over here at my stuff on it. I mean, you look at Skyview, right, and what they've been able to do over the last few weeks. They haven't lost since a game on December 20th, so almost an entire month ago, and that was at Twin Falls by 4 points. Outside of that, Skyview's losses are to Centennial and Middleton. You look at that and you say, hey, Skyview, I'll admit it, they kind of slid under my radar all year long, and what they've been able to do. Based on what we've seen so far, I would lean towards Skyview in that game. I think Skyview has been able to play well, that they've been on a roll. I mean, they won that, like you said, that Parma tournament, but that was only a 3-point game. So, I don't know. And, when you look at Columbia's schedule, that's their last loss. Their last loss is to Skyview. So, hey, you never know. Those two teams, before that, their last loss was on December 21st. So, I mean, I would lean Skyview, but it wouldn't surprise me either way if Columbia or Skyview wins that game. And I think those two have really set themselves apart, and maybe I think Skyview can actually make a little bit of noise at state. I would hope so, right, from District 3, that, those teams, there is this, rivalry between the East and the Treasure Valley, I feel like, that is more the Eastern teams feel that they're slighted. But honestly, having been over, I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm not an alumni of any high school here. So, but I just don't feel like that the teams from the Treasure Valley look down on Eastern Idaho, or that's not a thing over here, that they're like, anyway, I feel like that's a made up thing in people's minds. Personally, that's my personal thought on it. But it's no denying that those teams have been better this year. Preston, very good. Century, very good. Pocatello, very good. And only one of those teams is going to go. You look at, Blackfoot, Shelley, Skyline, some of those teams over there that sometimes have losing records and get in the tournament. And what do? They go and they beat the Treasure Valley teams, right? It happens. And so it would be nice to see somebody like a Skyview step up and say, no, thanks. We're gonna take care of business here.
Well, you didn't even mention the best team from the East, Hillcrest.
Yeah, I mean, how did I miss Hillcrest? That is embarrassing. That is because they might be the best team in the state. Like, they are.
Could be
unbelievable.
Yep. It's going to be interesting. Columbia with that double overtime win over Bishop Kelly 2 nights ago. Dan Bell led the way with 20 points in the win. Dan Bell, man, he's fun to watch for Columbia. He's 6'2", and he's basically like the post. He's like the power forward. So he's undersized, but man, he fights hard, and he's a rebounding machine. He's kind of like Dennis Rodman back in the day. He just finds ways to slip in there and get the board. So he had 20. Jack Keller had 19 for Columbia. He's a great outside shooter. And then Columbia also, you'll remember, Logan, a couple years ago, they had this really otherworldly player in Jalen Alexander.
Oh yeah, he was phenomenal.
His younger brother is a senior on the team, Makai Alexander, and he's 6'7", and he's kind of the guy that holds it down in the middle. He's still a little raw, he gets into foul trouble sometimes. He's not, Jalen Alexander was so good, and Makai is not quite there. So to compare them is unfair because they're almost totally different players. But that is a big body that, I don't know, nobody else in the SIC really has that, a 6'7" impact player like that. So Middleton
seemed to always have that in the 4A SIC. Obviously, they've moved up, and that size is gone from them. I feel like the conference has been a little bit more open with that. For years it was Tyler Robinette, and then it was Tyler Medeiros, or whoever else it was, Michael Day in there, but somebody else's turn, right, to be the big man of the 4A SIC. And, it's nice that it's another Alexander. I mean, Jalen had some plays that were just like jaw-dropping, right, where he had some highlight dunks in some games, and he was really fun to watch at Columbia.
Yeah, for sure. So, yes, Columbia and Skyview play tonight. They rematch at the very end of the regular season on February 15th. And by the way, Bishop Kelly gets Skyview and Columbia back-to-back in February as well, February 7th and February 10th. And both those games are at home for BK. So there's a lot still to be sorted out in the 4A SIC. But the winner of tonight's game between Columbia and Skyview takes that first step towards being in the driver's seat. Let's move to 3A hoops, and we're going to go to girls basketball, where last week Parma and Weiser met on the floor for the second time this year, and it did not disappoint. It was a tight game, but Parma gets out of there with the 39-33 win. This was a game that we had on IdahoSports.com, and it was a really fun battle between these two.
Yeah, and this is the second time they've played. A very similar score in those games. This one was a 6-point game. The first one a 4-point game. But Parma, has clearly staked themselves now with those 2 wins as the team to beat. And, they don't have to see Weiser the rest of the way. And I think the drop after those 2 is a little significant down to Fruitland, who sits at 3rd. And I think these 2 teams are going to roll through the rest of the way up to district tournaments. But yeah, there's no knock on Weiser. It's a couple of possessions and you've got a flipped story, right? And we've seen this with other girls teams, right? We talked last week about Melba and Cole Valley, right? Whatever happened in the regular season got flipped in the postseason. And I could very easily see that happening with these 2, right? They've been close, and I expect they'll probably play for the district championship in a couple of weeks and expect a fun one there as well.
Yep, it's going to be really – so the 2 matchups between these 2 this year, Parma won the first one by 4. Parma won the second one by 6. 10 points total between those 2. And so it's going to be fantastic. They're both 15-2 overall, and both right near the top in the IdahoSports.com power rankings, which, again, we update every day on IdahoSports.com. We pick a different team, a different game to highlight. And we break it down for you each and every day. 2A hoops. Let's go to boys basketball in the 2A Western Idaho Conference, where, oh boy, buckle up, Logan. We know Melba's good, right? 13-0 overall, 7-0 in the league. But after that, you have Cole Valley Christian, New Plymouth, and Nampa Christian. They are all 11-3 overall. Cole Valley is 6-2 in league. New Plymouth is 5-2 in league. Nampa Christian is 4-3. And further complicating matters is Ambrose, who's only 5-7 overall, but they are 4-4 in conference play after defeating Nampa Christian in overtime on Tuesday night, 77-75. What do you make of this league? And Ambrose only beat Marcin earlier this year by 2, 47-45. So really, this top 6, I don't know, man. 2 through 6. Throw a dart.
It's a mess. Yes. And I think anybody, let's take Melba out of this equation because they're out of this world good, right? Just unbelievable. But the rest of them, I think anybody could beat anybody on any given night. We've seen it, right? Nampa Christian is able to beat Cole Valley Christian, and then Ambrose beats Nampa Christian, right? If you want to do that stepladder, you can all day, all that you want. Which, by the way, I love that game. A couple years ago, you could trace ISU back to beating like Duke or North Carolina, one of the 2. It was hilarious. I had it like mapped out, and it was like, oh, I guess the Bengals are better than guess they're better than the Tar Heels, which is great. That's awesome. But so I love that game. But anybody can beat anybody on any given night, and I still think that I just got maybe a little biased because I saw Cole Valley play. I think they're really good. I think that they are a great team. They played well with Melba in the first matchup. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe those 2 play tomorrow on Friday. And I know that Cole Valley is ready for that second chance. They were in that game the first time. They led that game, I believe, in the third quarter. and before it slipped away, and they feel like that they can get it done, right? And I think that if anybody's going to take down Melba, I guess I'll look at it like that. If anybody's going to beat Melba, I think it's Coal Valley. I don't know if anybody else can take care of it, but I believe anybody else can beat Coal Valley because it's happened, obviously, right? Nampa Christian beat them. So I think it's fun, right? This might be the most up in the air because I think you could legitimately pick any of those, 4 teams and say, yeah, you're going to go to state. And I think any of them could come away with a win at state too. Now you want to guarantee your trip to state, right? Because your play-in game is not going to be easy this year against a team from the north.
Yeah, so the top 2 teams at districts get to go to state. Third place plays second place from District 1 and 2, which is at this point looking like Kellogg or St. Mary's, both really talented teams. So, it's going to be very interesting to see how that all shakes out. Big night of basketball Friday night, Logan. You've got Coal Valley taking on Melba. You've also got Ambrose playing New Plymouth. So another domino possibly could fall there. And then Ambrose turns around and plays on Monday, then Nampa Christian plays New Plymouth as well. So a big stretch coming up for the Pilgrims and head coach Jeff Lavender also.
Yeah, I mean they're 5-2, like you mentioned. 1, 2, 3 teams sit at 11-3, and New Plymouth, right? That their only losses in conference, right, are to Melba and Coal Valley, and you know what? They didn't get run out of the building in either one of those games, right? 14 points, I believe it was. I had it here. Let's see. Yeah. 14 points. Yeah. 14 points to Melba and 15 points to Coal Valley. So, hey, didn't get run out of the building. And, there's definitely a chance to maybe flip that script another time. So New Plymouth, a team lurking in the wing as well.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how all of that shakes out down the stretch. And maybe we'll have more data when we come back next week to do the Prepcast. All right, let's wrap up with 1A D2 hoops. Logan, you were in Garden Valley on Monday night. It was a very light schedule on Monday with the federal holiday and whatnot, but that didn't stop IdahoSports.com from going somewhere and bringing you a great broadcast. It was a girls-boys doubleheader between Cascade and Garden Valley, and the Wolverines get the sweep across the board. Let's talk about that girls game first, and then we'll talk about the boys game.
Yeah, so, I mean, the girls game, it's very interesting. That Cascade team is extremely young. They start they started 2 sophomores, or 2 freshmen on that team, 2 juniors, and then their 1 senior, Kyler Nitzel. And, they really struggled to score the ball, right? And I think that was something that people could see coming. I just think that they're just not there yet. They're just young. And Garden Valley just took advantage. Garden Valley, they were pretty balanced in scoring. Cadence Jacobs was our player of the game. She dropped 18 points. Caitlin Thompson, she had 16 points. And those 2 really led the way. It's funny, Gracie Castillo, right? She's a great wrestler from Garden Valley, finished 3rd place, I believe, right at the what was the wrestling match that was there? Yeah, Raleigh Lane, can't think of the name. I could see her. She came in like at the last minute and had like those wrestling earmuffs. See, I'm not a wrestler. I don't know. That's not my thing.
The headgear.
The headgear. She came in with that. So she had just gotten done with wrestling practice, I'm assuming, and then jumped in. But also talking to the Garden Valley coach, Mike Chandler, he's telling me that Gracie, she can't be there for Saturday games, right? This is an interesting thing that he told me about. So anytime they play on Saturday, she's not there. And so that affects, because she's at wrestling tournaments pretty much every time. And then they also have 2 other players. I believe it's Emma Davis and Aubrey Zimmer, that they play club volleyball. So they're not there Mondays and Wednesdays. So if they play on Monday or Wednesday, they're missing 2 players. If they play on a Saturday, they're missing 1 player. So unless they're playing on a Tuesday, a Thursday, or a Friday, they don't have their full team. And so that's an interesting development with Garden Valley, which part of me wonders, when you get to district tournaments, will that change? Will they say, all right, we're all in, we're going to bring everybody in. Club volleyball, you can wait. while this district tournament happens. Obviously, that was a game that really wasn't ever in doubt. Garden Valley came away with a big win there, but we'll see. I mean, obviously, there's the two giants in Council and Tri-Valley right now at the girls level that are just kind of head and shoulders above everybody else. But it wouldn't shock me to see if maybe Garden Valley can get hot at the right time, that they've got the players that could get it done on the girls' side.
Yeah, and so here's the interesting thing about that league race is Council and Tri-Valley are both 3-0 in conference. Garden Valley is 3-2 with 2 losses to Council and Tri-Valley.
Mm-hmm.
The Wolverines will still play Council and Tri-Valley once here over the final 10 days of the season. So a lot to be said for Garden Valley still, but for Council and Tri-Valley, they have not played yet.
Yeah.
If you'll recall, they were supposed to play on December 17th, but that was a week after Tri-Valley's head coach, Jeff Springer, unexpectedly passed away. And rightfully so, Tri-Valley said, we're not in a good place yet. So let's postpone the game. As far as I can tell, that game hasn't, that the rematch, the rescheduling has not occurred. That hasn't been put on the calendar anywhere that I've seen. So you're looking at now, they were originally scheduled to play in Cambridge on January 31st to kind of finish out the year. And that might be the only matchup we get between Council and Tri-Valley this year. And if they're both still undefeated, it's basically one game for the regular season title.
Yeah, and kind of an interesting development that, I mean, we've seen that in the NFL this year, right? Where a dramatic event like that can change around the schedule, and you don't want to look for it. You don't want to. It's kind of hard to talk about the ramifications of something that was so just not good, right? And where sports weren't the biggest concern there, but it obviously does at the end of the day have ramifications. But I personally think those two are just very good. Tri-Valley beat Garden Valley by like 19 points, something like that. And so Garden Valley would really need to turn things around to be able to get that done. Garden Valley, they did turn the ball over quite a bit for a team that won a game. So, I haven't seen Tri-Valley play, but obviously state champions 2 years ago, they know what winning a championship looks like. Council went to the state championship last year. I think those two just have that history recently and know how to perform in those high pressure games.
Yeah, Tri-Valley is a young team, Logan, not a senior on the team, which is crazy to think about. They've had some injuries. They did have some seniors that were going to be key players. And one at least is Manon Tyler out for the year with an injury. So this is a young team. And in fact, they only have 3 juniors on the varsity roster. So it's a lot of sophomores and freshmen for Tri-Valley this year. So that'll be interesting to see as it goes.
That seems to be par for the course for the whole Long Pin, right? I mean, we talked about Horseshoe Bend's volleyball team, right? When they were, rolling through everybody, and they didn't, they were super young too. It's just kind of interesting to see where did the seniors go in the Long Pin? they were there, right? There at some point. It's just interesting that there's this dichotomy, right, with some of the teams.
Yes, and I would have to look. I don't know this for sure. I'm just speculating, but Horseshoe Bend has been so good at volleyball, but it's not translating to basketball because Horseshoe Bend is doing a JV only schedule this year for girls basketball. So I wonder if the club volleyball maybe is taking some of those athletes away. I don't know.
It's taking some from Garden Valley, right? Some days of the week. Well, it's really funny because during the boys' game, there was a couple of the girls on Garden Valley team that would run out with a volleyball and were hitting it back and forth in the corner of the gym. It was like, okay, and then the game would start and they'd go back and sit down. Like they were playing volleyball before their game, during the JV game, and after their game, during the varsity boys game, just back and forth. And interesting stuff, right?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, and real quick, let's recap with boys basketball. You got to see Garden Valley play Cascade as well. Give us your breakdown of what happened there.
So, right, a lot of people can't get my words out. Cascade, if I remember correctly, was picked to win the conference by the coaches. But I tell you what, that Garden Valley team, they came out firing. They scored a lot of points quickly, and really Cascade just could not dig out of the hole. And at the end of the day, that's what doomed them. After the first quarter, it was 28-10 in favor of Garden Valley. They led by 18 points after that first quarter. They led by 22 at halftime. But then at the end of the day, it was only an 11-point game at the, when the final word sounded in that fourth. Even after the third quarter, it was a 22-point game. Cascade played very well the rest of the game outside that first quarter. They just doomed themselves with that first quarter and weren't able to dig themselves out of it. But, Garden Valley just was extremely balanced. I mean, Tacoma Kelly had 18 points. Trayson Korn had 17. Trevor Korn had 12. And Zayd Thompson had 10. Gavin Kelly with the 11. So, I mean, look right there. They had 5 players in double figures for Garden Valley. On the opposite side, Cole Olson, he had 21 points for Cascade. Grant Whipple had 10. Tyler Thurston, he had 18 for Garden Valley, for Cascade. So, and I think Cascade is a team that when they press, they're hard to beat. Garden Valley had a hard time beating that press, and that's where Cascade started to make that comeback when they put on the full court press and ran down the court and stole the ball. So, obviously, Garden Valley comes away with a win, so you got to give them kudos there. Now their second victory over Cascade on the season, so they're done with the Ramblers for the year. Now, Cascade was coming into that game off of a loss to Horseshoe Bend, which I don't think a lot of people saw coming. I personally didn't. I wasn't expecting Horseshoe Bend to knock down the Ramblers, especially with what they had shown the last couple of weeks. Cascade, that is. So, Brandon, you said that we got a video of that shot, right, that ended up helping Horseshoe Bend defeat Cascade. Do you have that?
Yes. Sorry, I had to duck away for a second. When you work from home and you have 2 dogs, we were like 2 seconds away from having an accident in the house. So I had to
take emergency.
Yeah. So anyways, yes, this is from Jenny Drake, Horseshoe Bend parent and fan. And she tagged us in this on Twitter. This was against Cascade. Porter Larson had the game-winning shot off the assist from Carson Drake. So here we go. Yeah, so that was huge. What a shot, right?
Yeah, on the road, no less, too. That's a heck of a play. And like I mentioned, Brandon, while you were out, Cascade is a good team. That's a tough loss to Horseshoe Bend. And again, they trailed by 22 at halftime, and then they were the better team, I thought, in the second half. And honestly, they were probably the better team from the midway point of the second quarter. I thought that Cascade, but at that point they had dug themselves in a hole. They were down by 30. I think at one point was as high as it got. And you just can't start slow and find, come back that far. Right. And then this is something that when I talked to Coach Nate Hartman and Boise coach Valera the other day at their game, that they were both disappointed in how their teams had started their game. They had started slow, and they didn't want that anymore. And in that game, Boise did not start slow. They came out and they started extremely fast, got up double digits on, it was like 13-2, just like that. And then they went on to win the game. There was, Middleton made a little comeback, but it wasn't enough. Same thing here. Not a great start for Cascade. If they start that game 50% better, just don't give up so many points. At the end of it, 28 points, we thought Garden Valley was going to drop 100 in that game. But we were like, can they stop them? And at the point, they could not. And you know what? You got to start the game. You got to start it. And, you can't just come out and it's easy to say from my point of view, right? It's so easy for me to say that not being out there. So I don't know what goes into that fully. for a player out there. But if you don't start well, it's you're not going to catch up every time. It happens. It does happen. But it's not common to dig yourself out of a 22-point deficit in the third quarter.
Like the great poet group, the Black Eyed Peas once said, "Let's get it started."
There you go.
Let's get it started hot. Yeah, you want to get on to a hot start.
But, that kind of leads me to, like we said, to do the School of the Week. Yeah. We're going to go ahead and give that to Garden Valley. We were up there. We saw them. It was a fun experience. Both of their teams undefeated over the past week. So there's really no reason to not go ahead and knock it and give it to Garden Valley, the team of the week, School of the Week, for their performance, both boys and girls.
Good coaches, man. Mike Chandler on the girls' side. He's the athletic director as well. Heather Kelly, the boys coach, and Jason Yearsley, the football coach, is the assistant coach for boys basketball. It's a good group of coaches up there in Garden Valley for sure. So.
Yeah, and they just rotate through the same names, right? These names are the football names. It's funny when we had the player of the game and I tagged them on Instagram. I just tagged the football team's account because it's the same team, right? And they just traded their football pads for a basketball jersey. It's right. It's the same team. So
yeah, for sure. All right. Well, Garden Valley School of the Week, and we went a little long today, but man, there was a lot of good stuff to get to, and we're heading to the finish line for girls basketball. We'll have a lot to talk about in girls hoops next week, especially. And so, enjoy the competitions this week, wherever you're at, wherever you're going, wrestling or basketball. And thanks for tuning in, everybody. For Logan Green, I'm Brandon Baney. We'll see you next time on the Treasure Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.